welcome to this webinar on capture workflows. And basically, we're trying to come up tonight with a means by which we can give you the best advice for starting your capture of your images off. So really aimed in the camera, this side of things tonight. We're trying to come up with a selection of solutions to make sure you're calibrated in camera as perfectly as possible. So let's kick off with a bit of an idea of what we're doing. We're going to be having a look at, well, this is the ideal workflow. So tonight I'm going to be running through how we can get as near to this as possible at that front end of the workflow. So we'll run through the webinar. I'm afraid probably won't be as long as normal tonight. Probably be about 3/4 of an hour of actual input from me. But at the end of that, we'll swap over to you guys getting the opportunity to type in questions if you have any, and I'll answer those. Apologies if anybody tried to get into the Adobe and Datacolor webinar last week. Unfortunately, both myself and Richard Curtis from Adobe were off ill, so with different ailments, I have to say. And I have got a bit of a cold again tonight, so I still get the remains of it. So apologies if I have to cut out for a few minutes during the sessions tonight. But basically, we'll try and keep going and get you as up to speed as possible on how to get to this sort of nirvana that is what we're showing you here. What we're trying to do is we're giving you the opportunity to say, okay, when I'm taking my photographs, I want to be able to have that clean workflow that whatever I'm seeing, and in particular we're talking about colors here, is what I'm getting out of my output. Now that output in this case might be a printer, but of course it could be anything nowadays ranging from iPads, tablet computers of any sort, maybe an app on there, or it could be the internet, of course, and that could be viewed on many things. So there's lots of different parameters at the back end of the workflow. What we want to focus on is this front end, i.e. what happens when we take the photograph. Now, for sake of argument here, I'm showing a bit of a color cast being taken. I mean, this is obviously you don't tend to see it in camera, but this the suggestion here is that that's the purpose of this particular part of the workflow is we're looking at how to correct that. Now, there's a whole range of different solutions. In fact, there's a whole range of things that can go wrong there, of course. Not just color cast, but it could be issues of focus as well. So we're going to have a look at how we can solve those. But we are going to start off with how to address things like color casts in our workflow. We've got a couple of different solutions we're going to talk about. But let's sort of put it more into perspective. What we're really referring to here is when you're taking photographs, you go out there, and of course if you're shooting a raw workflow, you're probably encouraged to overexpose your images, because that way you're going to cut down on your noise and put yourself in probably a better situation, because an overexposed raw image has probably got a lot of information in there you're not going to see with the human eye, but you can then bring it back in. And so what we need to do, though, is to get to that situation where, okay, once we've taken our photographs, we can figure out what was the correct capture conditions. Where was I as far as, am I taking a picture of something where, in particular in things like, I don't know, sports photography, where I've got a particular team livery to shoot, or, where you've got a particular color you want to get right. For instance, in this example here, I've just got a bit of a photo captured there, and you're seeing, the joys of some leaves on a beige background. But the question is, well, actually, was that what I shot? Did I over or underexpose it? And was it perhaps, sort of more or less lime green leaves and more sort of just pure green leaves and a white background, or perhaps it was darker or lighter? So what we need to do is to have some frame of reference. Now, of course, what we've had along the way over the years are things called grey cards. And essentially what you're doing there is you're taking a picture of a card, as the name would suggest, which has got areas of grey and white potentially on the card. And the point of that is you're giving yourself a frame of reference, so that whatever the values of those grey segments or white segments on that card are, you're actually getting something you know what those values are. So therefore, of course, when you take that picture, using that as a frame of reference in one of your shots, and then take that into your computer, you can then use that as a point of reference to adjust back from. such that you can say, okay, I now know I've got something. I knew what the values of white and grey are on that card. I can apply an adjustment, and then I can apply that adjustment to every other image taken in that same lighting condition, because it will adjust them to the same extent. It'll correct them. So that's great. Trouble is, with cards, they can be a bit inflexible, and hence they can get creased. Or the flexible ones, and they're nice little foldable, fold-away ones, can of course have another problem, in as much as they can get creased up and very easily mucked up, such that what starts off as, I don't know, 12% or 11% grey and 18% grey on the card very quickly becomes out of commission, basically, unusable, because the levels are wrong. So what we've got within the Datacolor pantheon of products is something called the SpyderCUBE. Now, this is it here. Now, I'm going to pop out of the joys of slideware in a second and take you into showing you how to use this, basically. But what you're looking at there is a picture of the SpyderCUBE. It's about 2 centimeters, or sorry, 2 inches or 4 centimeters per side. It is cubic, so what you're looking at there is actually got a point pointing towards you, basically. And you've also got, for instance, at the bottom there's a little sort of tubey thing. Well, that's the mount for a tripod or lighting mount, because it's quite handy, isn't it, to be able to pop these things in. But if one of the joys of a physical grey card is, well, you probably need somebody to hold it, because usually they're not mountable in any way. Or, and the other thing is, you also need to angle it correctly as well, because you need to have it roughly at 45 degrees to the inclement lighting conditions, so that you can actually get the right value of grey that you're using as a reference. Because, as you can see here, this is cubic, but I've got 2 different sides to that, basically. You can see there's 2 different grey faces there. In actual fact, they're the same colour, but here they're looking different. And of course, the question is which to use as a frame of reference. Well, in the case of a card, if it's a flat plane, you've only got one option. So you just need to angle that correctly, 45 degrees to the light. In the case of the cube, well, it's somewhat better. But let's pop out of the slideware there, and let's pop into Camera Raw. I've got it open here, but basically the cube is essentially, it is a grey card, but it isn't grey. It isn't a card. Those are pretty much 2 of the criteria, I suppose. So I suppose you might call it it's a exposure cube or a grey cube. What we've got here is the same shot, or very similar shot to what you saw in the slideware. We've got the image here, and what we can see, because I've got my Camera Raw open here, but you can be using this in any pretty much any software that's got a white balance tool, is we've got a lighter side here and a darker side here. And as I pointed out during the slideware, those sides are actually the same. Now I've got a red out of gamut warning here at the moment on one of these slides. That's because I've got my out of gamut warnings turned on my histogram. Now histogram is this thing up in the top right hand corner. So you're talking a graph that shows you the dispersion of color across, or lighting across an image. So on the right hand side we've got the highlight end, the light bits of your image. On the left hand side you've got the shadow end, or the dark parts of the image. Now as you can see, pretty much everything's over on the right hand side, because this is definitely an overexposed image. I've got nothing in the shadow end, but I have got both my outer gamut warnings turned on. So that top white triangle in the top right hand corner there is one of my outer gamut warning switches, and I've got a blue one there on the left hand side. But basically, because there's nothing that is over 100% black or under 0% dots, you're not seeing anything there. We are seeing this red reminder, this red outer gamut warning on this silvery ball, and on this triangular face here, or triangular part of the face here. Now that's because this is actually a white face, same as this face is here. Both of them read, or are manufactured to be 97%, 96% white, so nearly 100%, but not 100%. So the fact that this is reading over 100% tells us immediately we're overexposed. Now you can also see on this cube, because it's pointing towards us, we can see one side is getting more light than the other. And if you recall what I said about grey cards, is that they need to be angled at 45 degrees to the light. Well, strange enough, as long as you've got this little black dot, which actually is a hole pointing towards you, then one of these 2 sides will be about 45 degrees to the light. So we know here, because that's the overexposed side, that's the side we're going to use. That's the side where the light is coming in from. It's going to be roughly 45 degrees to it, and therefore, great. We know that okay, we can actually use our left-hand side in this case, as we're looking at it, to set our grey balance. So let's go and do that. Let's go and, in this case, grab the grey balance tool or white balance tool from our little slide selection there, and instantly, as soon as we apply that to the grey side, that is the overexposed side here, it's actually brought that tonality out. It's brought that hue out of our image. So we can now see, great, they were sort of, it was less of a beige background, it wasn't 100% white. So we now know we've got the true color there as far as that cast is concerned. Now, two other things we need to do in order to get our correct values here, which we can then save and we can then apply to every other image taken in this lighting condition. We're just going to go in and we're going to say, let's reduce down our exposure until that red outer gamut warning on that face just disappears there. At that point, if we wanted to, we could read the actual readings in here, but basically it's telling us we're just underneath 100% black, sorry, 100% white, so therefore we're probably about 96%. Just as a rough and ready solution here, we could be more accurate if we want to. But of course, the key thing we need to do now is just drop that last element down, the shadow end, because we still haven't got virtually any outer gamut warning and any dispersion of light and intensity and color into our shadow end. And we know that this little black dot here is actually a hole, as I mentioned, and that effectively is your relative black point. So that's supposed to be 100% black. Around that is a 4% black. So, or 100%, 0% dots, I should say. And around that is a 4% value there, so 4% black, if you like. So what we need to do now is just use, in this case, the black slider, just to drop that down until we just fill in that hole. And at that point, what's around there, as it hasn't gone straight over to 100% yet, must be somewhere just underneath the 100% black, or the zero, rather, I should say, 0 dots there. So we've pretty much got the right readings now. We've got the relevant readings on the grey faces. We've got that black filling in there. The only place we've still got a red reminder is on our ball at the top here. Now this is a silvery ball, and it's intentionally made to be silvery. It is metallic silver. Essentially what we're trying to capture there is your scintillation points, i.e. those little pings of light that you'd get on the bumpers of cars, or the glint in the boyfriend's eye, whatever it may be. But basically this is where you're getting that total out of gamut warning, and that's the only place, as far as this guide is concerned, this, for want of a better word, grey card, but as I say, grey cube in this case, that's the only place you should be getting that 100% out of gamut warning. When we know that the rest of the values are correct and how we want them, we know that we've now set the correct exposure, the correct contrast ratio, if you like, because we've got the blacks the same, the right level as well, and also we've taken out that color cast. So we've now set up the parameters we want to be able to use time and time again. So of course the key thing to do now is just to save those settings. Let's just quickly save those. It's just, in the case of Camera Raw, part of Lightroom, sorry, Photoshop here, we're just going to go and call that a, I don't know, Tuesday night cowl. There we go. Save that. And then basically if we go into our same little drop down menu, it's quite sort of unobtrusive there, but if we apply that, we can now see we've got a whole bunch of the Tuesday night cowl I've just created there. So that can now be applied time and time again to multiple different images in the lighting conditions. And of course the key thing here is, if you are going out there, you're shooting in lots of different lighting conditions, or if you're doing it in a studio, and you are overexposing to get the best out of that Camera Raw side of things, then great. Okay, we've now got a means of bringing back the capture parameters to get them correct, get them true to what they were in the first place. So hopefully that's giving you a little bit of an insight into the starting of the process here. And just to sort of finish this piece about the cubes and this grey cube, if you like, off. As mentioned, effectively you're looking at a 3-dimensional cube. It is tripod mountable. You can also hang it as well. Obviously, you saw it being hung in that particular example there. But key thing about it is it's a solid device. It's solid plastic. It's impregnated all the way through the actual colours. So therefore, it doesn't even matter if it were to scratch. It's very unlikely to scratch. It's highly scratch resistant. But basically, this is a substantial little cube that very easily can pop into your pocket. So it's something you should have on you at all times. It's something you can easily pull out, and whether you're taking a photo on your proper cameras or whether it's on your camera phone or some other device, basically, then you've got it there to hand, and you can therefore use it as a reference. You're starting to get yourself into a good capture scenario. you're correctly getting yourself set up such that you can actually get your colors, get your exposure, get your images correct. Now, top tip, if you are popping it into your pocket and you happen to wash your clothes more than once in a lifetime, then basically it comes in a nice little bag. Pop it into that bag before you pop it into your trouser pocket, because it would take a long time, but there are bleaching agents in detergents that you use to clean clothes that can bleach the colors there. And as it's supposed to be a relevant guide to your image colors, you need to have grey levels. You need to have those grey levels correct. You don't want to be essentially bleaching it and therefore making that not last as long as it should do. But in a good lifetime, I mean, I'd suggest you're going to get a good 10, maybe 15 years out of this, if not longer. I mean, really, they are surprisingly robust, and compared to the joys of using grey cards that I've used in the past, where they fold, they crease, they blow away, you can't mount them, you have to have somebody else there to hold them. You have to start asking your clients, if they're the ones that you're actually taking photos of, to hold the device. All of that disappears. It's a very professional means of, and an unobtrusive means of getting control of your imagery. So that's part of our range of capture calibration tools. Now, there's a couple of other tools we're going to look at. One of them is going to be a more it's a different end of things. It is related to calibration. There's something called the LENSCAL, which we'll have a look at in a bit. But we're first of all going to have a look at what essentially is the SpyderCUBE's big brother, and it's the SpyderCHECKR. Now, this is a color card, basically. It solves a particular problem that we all have. I mean, I'm sure even if we're not doing it professionally, we all go to weddings and end up taking photographs of weddings. It tends to be the case that if you are vaguely competent with a camera and you're at a wedding, you'll get dragged in to do something. And of course, what we don't want to do is to come off looking like a complete amateur. Now, as you'll see shortly, if you look at the photos I'm going to be using, of the ones that I've taken, well, I am a complete amateur. But that's quite good from a demonstration point of view, because it allows me to have some really great examples to hand of poorly taken photographs, so I can show you how to make things better. In this instance, we've got a classic example of some great photos, but the trouble is that because they've been taken in different lighting conditions, and classically weddings are very familiar for this sort of situation, you end up with the same groom and bride, or the same couple, looking completely different in different lighting conditions. And it's not something you necessarily want. You don't want it to look as though they've suddenly gone off and been tangoed, had a spray tan, and changed their clothes halfway through the day, and then changed it back again at the end of the day. What you want is to have a consistency across the whole range. And more to the point, not necessarily, well, I suppose even in the case of weddings where you've got to get that colour of that the bride's dress spot on, you frequently end up with other types of photography where you've got to get the colours right. Food photography being the classic. Sports photography, again, getting the livery of the team or the colour of the car correct. Absolutely important for you to be able to get control. Now, we've shown you the cube as a means of addressing overall colour casts and getting exposure correct as a quick and easy solution. The slightly more protracted, but certainly far more accurate solution is the SpyderCHECKR. Now you can see here pretty much exactly what it's doing. It's taking you from that sort of uncontrolled scenario due to particular lighting, in this case in a studio, into a realistic facsimile creation of the colors. Now the good thing here is we've got people, for instance, who are using this who are colorblind, and they don't need to be able to see the colors because they can trust the fact that once they're using this solution, it's going to correct those colors for you. And I'll go through the solution and how it works. Again, I'm going to take you out of the slideware here and show you it in use in Lightroom as the more sort of ubiquitous photographer's tool nowadays. But basically, you're going to see there that effectively you don't have to do a great deal of work at all, because the software that comes with it in this case, because it comes with its own little plugin, and that's for Lightroom, for Photoshop, and for Focus from Hasselblad as well. Basically, it takes the mainstay of the work out of your hands, basically, and corrects those colors for you. Now, before we have a look at the software and the actual solution in practice, just point out to you, the reason why this is quite a large device, it does actually fold shut. It's a clamshell style approach, basically. You can see there it's folded open. The model's holding it open in this instance. It's quite large, though. It's actually about the size of, well, when shut, about the size of a typical iPad or tablet computer. So about twice the size when it's folded open. You need a decent sized target if you want to get your colors right. If you're going to be doing group scenes or scenes from any distance whatsoever, you need to have something big enough to hit without having to zoom right in on camera in order to see it. Because if you zoom right in on camera, suddenly you're not going to be metering for the actual lighting conditions you're in. You're going to be calibrating, or you're going to be metering for the lighting conditions of the tablet, of the SpyderCHECKR here. So you need something big enough that you can actually still focus on the same area that you're going to be shooting. So in this case, the model in the background, but still be able to see it. Because what we're going to do is we're actually going to crop it in within Lightroom, for instance, in this case, in order to get that working better. Now, this is the key thing. Don't use something small when you want to be calibrating this many colors. You need to have a decent sized color chart. Now, the good thing in this case is, again, it's a solid device. It's in a case that actually folds out and protects the actual color charts themselves, so therefore it's very very robust, basically. It's also tripod mountable. Again, at the bottom there you'll see a little silver hinge at the base. That's actually got its own tripod mount, so you can actually mount this on a lighting mount or a tripod mount again, and therefore again you don't need to disturb your clients, your customers, your models. You can take a shot of this in the relevant lighting conditions before your shoot, or in fact after. It doesn't matter actually when you shoot it, as long as you get it shot in with the batch of photographs in the lighting conditions you're in. So basically, I want to be able to use this once again to set up a correction factor, a preset, like I set up with the SpyderCUBE there, but a far more accurate one that I can use across all the photographs that are taken in the relevant lighting conditions and apply it to those and correct all of them. Key thing, if you're doing multiple lighting conditions, like you do at weddings, for instance, then shoot it in each of the lighting conditions, because you'll need a different preset for each lighting condition. So shoot it, give it a sensible name, and then you can apply that to each of those lighting conditions. So let's have a quick look at this. As I say, apologies that you're going to see my photographs here. This is nothing to. Well, it should be good for you, because basically you should make you feel that okay, great. If he can do this, then yeah, you can feel comfortable that there is not a piece of competition that's currently showing you how to do stuff. This is somebody who really is just coming from the software and the computing world that's showing you how to work this. Because basically what we've got is a classic scenario. The same people in different lighting conditions. Bleached out in some, bizarrely coloured in others. Look at even out of focus. Can't do much about that. Well, maybe I can, but that's the next scenario. Or in this case, overly coloured because of the lighting conditions you're in. So what do we need to do? Well, we're going to do exactly what we said earlier on. We're going to shoot that guide. Shoot it in each case in the same size of image that you're going to be taking. If it's a group scene, the same sort of width of image, and then crop it in. Now, I've already done the cropping part here because it's not the most exciting thing to watch. So we crop down the guide, the SpyderCHECKR, and we've got different lighting condition versions of it here. We'll just use one of these as an example. It's the same process to start off with as we did with the SpyderCUBE. And you can extrapolate, if you like, to see how you could use the SpyderCUBE within Lightroom, for instance. Slightly easier to use Lightroom than it is to use Camera Raw. In fact, probably a lot easier, because you can easily see multiple shots and be able to choose all those shots and apply the same effect, the same preset to those straight away. Okay, so in this instance, we're going to start off, we're going to create this preset. It's going to pop up a preset over here in our left-hand side of our Lightroom window. This is where we're in the Develop module in Lightroom. It's where all that developing magic goes on, i.e. the retouching magic as far as Lightroom is concerned. We've still got all our capabilities of control over here on the right-hand side as well. It's not going to affect the camera profile, the camera calibration down the bottom here. That is still independent and able to allow you to set up different profiles, different camera calibrations for different lenses, cameras, etc., etc. Here, what we're going to do is we're going to quickly start off by just, first of all, setting the white balance, same as we did with the SpyderCUBE. We're just going to choose this grey square here, set that, And you'll have seen a subtle, if you look at the histogram, a subtle change in the colors in this instance. Let's just undo that so you can see that. So it's just slightly reducing down those colors there. Bump. Okay, so basically what we're doing now is we're saying to you, okay, we've corrected those colors, and we've taken that color cast out of this in this particular instance. But now what we're going to do is we're going to do, again, the same process. We're going to have a look at our exposure levels first of all. Now in this case I obviously hadn't overexposed it, because if we have a look at the histogram here, directly underneath here, when I hold my cursor over here, you'll see it says 95.3, 95.3, 95.4. Now as I say, it should be about 96% white. That's what that value is. So we can just adjust that slightly, just increase the exposure just a little bit, just with our exposure slider. In fact, I've gone too far, haven't I? But basically, for sake of a couple of seconds of demonstration, there we are. We're pretty much about right on exposure there. Down the bottom here, we've got a 4% black. Now, again, perhaps a little bit too high here, so we'll just drop the blacks again using the black slider in this case, just a fraction, just to drop that down. So basically, yeah, well, still a little bit over. Let's just drop it a little bit further. Yeah, gone a bit too far. Again, just for sake of demonstration, we'll quickly get that done, job done. So, okay, we've set our parameters. So we've removed the color cast, we've set the exposure and the shadow end. Exactly what we did with our SpyderCUBE, but now we're going to go the one better. We're going to go into our photo drop-down menu here, and we're going to go down to our SpyderCHECKR app, basically. So this is the app. Mac or PC comes with the SpyderCHECKR itself, and it allows you to pop open, in Lightroom for instance, a new version of our shot, and basically that's going to allow us to calibrate that shot. Now it's going to quickly have a look for updates, which it saw there wasn't any. You've got an option of a 24 patch version of this same guide. So there's a 24 patch version, or there's the 48. Now obviously the 48 is what we shot, so that's what we're going to use. Evidently it's more accurate because there's twice as many colors basically. But what we've got here, if I just remove this sort of overlay here, we've got the picture that we shot and we've cropped down in the background, and then the thing that I've picked up and moved here, this is actually the sample points for that SpyderCHECKR. So therefore all we're doing is we're giving you the opportunity, just in case you haven't shot it square on, to actually reposition your sample points for each of those squares. Because as opposed to you having to go through with a color picker and pick the first square and make the adjustments and then decide, oh, hang on a minute, right, actually that's now right, but let's move to the second square and change that, and then in doing that you're actually affecting the result in the first square, and then basically never being able to do this. What the software does very cleverly, it samples every one of those 48 points at exactly the same time. And then it comes up with this creation of this correction preset immediately, straight away. So no real work for you to do. All you need to do is choose, well, where you've come from. Yes, it come out of Lightroom, so let's save it to Lightroom. You can give it a bit of a nuance, so you can give it a portrait or a saturation bias. A colorimetric is more neutral. I.e., what we're saying there is the preset we're going to create here is going to be your correction for your color curve. Now you can just give it a little bit of a soft punch towards more saturated colors if you're doing, for instance, I don't know, pack photography and so on. But it's still going to be the same color curve, it's just going to have a little bit of a punch to it. And likewise, if you were doing more portraiture, then hence you could choose the portrait slant to that. But fundamentally, every one of these presets is going to be very small. There's only a little bit of metadata that's telling the Lightroom, in this case, how to adjust your color curves within the software. So actually you could create one of each if you wanted to. I'm only going to create one here, and I'm just going to call that save calibration. We'll call that, once again, I don't know, oops, Tuesday night later. Okay, and that's it. All we've done there is we've let the software do its work. Now it should pop into this area down here. Now you see we've got Tuesday night late, etc., etc. We haven't got Tuesday night later because one nuance of Lightroom compared to what you saw in Camera Raw, with Lightroom, and something to do with the way Lightroom is made, you just need to quit it and restart it to get these presets to pop in there, basically. basically. So effectively what you do need to do is just to do that perhaps at the end of the day. So if you're shooting a lot of different shoots, you're processing those, just go in and do those different color swatches basically, and produce the relevant presets. Then you can just quit and restart at the end of the day, and it'll pop in there. I mean, it only takes seconds anyway, so why not? Let's quickly quit it, skip the backups this time, and then just quickly reopen. And then, of course, we'll prove the point that I can't find Lightroom. There it is. There's Lightroom in my dock. So let's just pop it back open, and hey presto, any second now. There we go. If I go down here, Tuesday. I've got Tuesday night later. There we are. There is the relevant preset. If we apply that now, you can see a subtle change in those colors. So it's affected it was more the blues, I think you could see in this instance. If we scroll up through these presets, and as I say, they're only small. So you can see I've got dozens of them here, basically. What's best to do, and one of the benefits of having it in the left-hand side in the preset area of your library module, of your develop module rather here, is you can actually group these together. So here's, for instance, a little folder I've put together of my different presets for this particular photo shoot. And effectively what we've got here is basically just a selection of these 4 little corrections for the different lighting conditions. I'll show you them being applied in a minute, but the good thing is, of course, you can actually archive this off. You can choose to export these and save it with your images. So it's only small, and therefore you can save your images on a backup archive and save your corrections with them as well. But if I go back into our delightful selection of images, we can say, okay, great, well, there's an outside the church shot, so let's correct that, boom. Choose the relevant correction, and away we go. Suddenly we can see that they're not all wearing bleached out white shirts. We've got some pinks and some greys in there, basically. Likewise, if I go into, for instance, the shots in the reception, so okay, there we go, boom, let's again correct those. Instant impact. Still haven't got his eyes open. Can't do much about that with this particular plugin, but you can obviously with Lightroom if you want to go in and have a play around with that. But if we go back into the inside the church, different color cast again. But let's actually correct that. And again, he's still not in focus, but hey, at least the colors are correct now as well. And of course, as I say, the good thing is for multiple shots in the same lighting conditions, you can choose all of them and then apply it straight away. So great way of working, fantastic way of getting the colors correct. Not just vaguely correct, but basically getting them absolutely spot on. So really takes that sort of unprofessionality out of the color side of things in your capture. Still leaves it open to you as far as what you do with the camera in the first place. So there we go. That's the joys of the SpyderCHECKR. Let's just give you a little bit more information about it, because of course, key thing, as I say, it's about the size of a tablet computer. You see it in the bottom right-hand corner there. You see it shut down there, actually, in comparison to the size of the cube. So not something you're going to pop into your pocket unless you have particularly large pockets. But that's the thing. It's something that you can work in conjunction with the cube, actually, because there's actually a pop-up spindle at the top of your SpyderCHECKR here on that top hinge, and that's where you can actually attach the cube, because of course the cube had a little spindle at the bottom of it, didn't it? So therefore I can put my cube on top, and therefore I can then tripod mount both of them using the spindle at the bottom of our SpyderCHECKR, and therefore I can use the cube in order to set the contrast levels and exposure to start off with, because of course that takes out any issues with having to have it angled at 45 degrees to the lighting. And with the SpyderCHECKR, you can set your colors. And the good thing is, as mentioned, it's solid, robust, it's going to have a heck of a life to it. But there is actually capabilities here for replacing the cards, because they are actually swap-outable cards. As I say, it does work in multiple softwares, but it also has a fade checker with it. And that is that little red dot down the bottom left-hand side there. Actually, there's another one underneath the casing. You see this casing door sort of pops open. Well, the same thing applies on here, and that can just pop open, and there's another red square which is hidden from view at the moment, which of course as soon as you do actually open that, suddenly you can see it, and you can see whether there's any change, because of course one of these squares is open to the light, the same as your SpyderCHECKR is, the other one isn't. So obviously one will fade if indeed fading ever applies to these cards, and that will tell you whether you need to change those. Two separate cards, as I say, so you've got two different styles of lighting. One more for colors, one more for the portraiture element there, one more for the sort of general color gamut. On the back of those cards, you also get a very big grey card. Now, good thing here is that both the grey card and the, as mentioned, the joys of the SpyderCHECKR cards here, this card in particular, are both used in the video world as well. So if you are shooting video or going into shooting video, you can use both. That's the left-hand pane of the SpyderCHECKR, or the grey cards on the back there. Both can be used within calibration within the softwares like Blackmagic Resolve, for instance, or just generally within Premiere for things like setting your grey balance and so on for your images. So really multitasking tool there. Probably the best thing in my bag, as you can see, is better than my camera, certainly as far as I'm concerned. There is, as I said, the little baby brother of it. Now, it doesn't come in the nice solid case that the SpyderCHECKR does, but it's in a fairly robust little wallet there. It's got the same grey card on the back, and it is the left-hand side of the main SpyderCHECKR, so therefore you can actually use it within Blackmagic Resolve, again, for color calibration for video as well. Obviously comes at a more affordable cost there, but we'll come to things like cost later on. But, so there we are. There's our color calibration, our capture calibration sorted out as far as our images are concerned. What's left? Well, focus. Not just an instruction for you guys, but an instruction for our camera. Of course, we hit that autofocus button every time we take a photograph. Unless, of course, it's my wife, in which case she never hits the autofocus button, and, well, anyway, that's another story. But basically, what we've got here is a great ability in order to solve something you may not even know you have, and that's a problem with autofocus, because of course, autofocus is something that's set in the camera and set in the production line of that camera. And if, for instance, your lenses maybe change over time, or maybe have some sort of slight imperfection due to the joys of, well, basically manufacturing tolerances, then effectively you could get something that you think is in focus and isn't. And you're trusting that. You're trusting that autofocus is correct. And whereas it should be, it isn't. So how do we solve this? Well, we've got the SpyderLENSCAL. Great device, very solid, robust plastic, folds flat actually, so you can actually fold it down. But effectively here we're showing you the popped up version. As you can see, it's actually got a spirit level. You can't perhaps quite make that. There's a spirit level there just so you can check that you are having this flat. And there's also, again, another tripod or lighting mount stand or spindle there. So you can actually lighting mount or tripod mount this such that you can shoot it from a tripod mounted camera. Because, of course, the important thing with this is you obviously don't want any movement. So really best to be using either a time shutter or release assist there. And basically, you're going to be trying to resolve this, because you've got two different things that could happen here. You could have a camera that's slightly out of focus. Yeah, it may have been just not quite on as far as the autofocus is concerned when it left the production line. Or you could have a lens. And actually, if they're both out by the same amount, then you're possibly not going to see anything. But of course, if you've got more than one lens and different lenses going the other way with that incorrect focus, you're going to suddenly see a massive problem on some lenses and not on others. So you need to be able to calibrate for every camera and every lens, because every one of those combinations could be out. So what do? Well, effectively you tripod mount or just desk mount your LENSCAL. Shoot, aiming for that center target there. So we're going to shoot for there. And of course this is a reclining ruler here, which if you're shooting center focused, aiming for that center focused point, then basically 0 on this line should be in focus. And now we've obviously got a wide depth of field because everything's in focus. But if we're shooting, as far as this is concerned, on that autofocus point, having tripod mounted it, then basically you should be able to see what's in focus. And if, for instance, it's not in focus, it's probably better to do this on your computer than it is in the back of the camera, but hey, the option is yours. But if you can see what is actually in focus on that rule, then you can apply that as an adjustment factor into the micro adjustment area of your camera. Now, not all cameras have this micro adjustment, but pretty much anything over the last 4 or 5 years has had it introduced in there. So it's going to be pretty ubiquitous, and it's going to give you the opportunity to correct for that out of focus. So here you can see it was definitely rear focusing here in this particular instance. Now we want to bring that back into alignment, so we're just going to shoot it and then pop in the correct correction into that micro adjustment. There it is there. Then just quickly shoot again with every one of those combinations just to check that things are now correct. And that's what it should look like. That's where it should be, spot on, in focus, at 0, and you know you're in good shape, basically. Of course, key thing to bear in mind here, you can not only use this to check your focus, but you can actually use that creatively, because if you're doing a shot of, in particular, close work portraiture, and you want to be taking a shot of the eyes, but you also, there's not a lot of point in getting the eyes spot on focus, but having, the back of the head slightly in focus. You want the nose, the tip of the nose to be in focus, don't you? That's where you can actually use this to just bring that adjustment slightly forward, spoof it if you like, such that you can actually use that creatively just to bring in the areas. If you're doing a lot of portraiture, for instance, then that's great. You can bring in the areas that you want to be in focus. So focus on the eyes and the tip of the nose will be in focus. Shoot the driver on the bike and the front headlights of the bike will be in focus. That sort of scenario. And just a quickie, there's a few of the older cameras out there that are actually covered by this, but of course everything pretty much since any of those by those manufacturers is now also got micro adjustment capability in there. So it's a tool that solves a massive problem which you may not even know. In fact, we did a little survey at the previous photo keynote, not the last one, but the one before, and I think of about 1,600 people that we offered the service to for free. Pretty much 60% of their lenses were out of focus, and it was the ones that were only just out of focus that were the problem ones, because they were the ones that they weren't quite sure if they had an issue or not. Maybe it was them that was the problem. That's why, even though they were sure they'd focused things correctly when they were taking those photos, it just wasn't there. So, great way of solving that particular problem for you. Now, we've come pretty much throughout the whole of that front end. We've showed you how to resolve those front end workflow issues. But what happens in real life compared to this little scenario where we're then taking it from camera into a retouch environment, on my Cintiq here or on my computer screen, and everything's doing the same. What if it doesn't? What if it looks different? What if it has a bit of a color cast? Well, of course, that's where we need to just bring in the fundamental solution to color management, and that is calibrating your displays. Because, of course, the problem here is if you're seeing on your displays a color cast, or a color effect, a lighting effect to your images, it's not effectively showing your images correctly. And in particular, if you're getting a difference between your screen and your Cintiq, as I am in this case, by the way, those 3 screens at the bottom there is actually supposed to be the same screen over a period of time, because that's what's going to end up happening. You're going to end up looking at that green tinge, for instance, in the case of the screen, and maybe you'll trust that over your Cintiq, who knows? But basically, if you trust the green tinge, then what you're going to try and do is remove that back to that sort of neutral look that you originally had to your images. If you do that, then actually, as opposed to getting those images coming out, and bearing in mind we're thinking that the back end here is completely perfectly calibrated, so that's a thing for another night to discuss. But what we are going to end up with is that back end image coming out slightly red, because you've removed green from your images, and that's meaning that you've got a color cast being applied to you what was actually a correct image. So in this scenario, you've not only ruined your image, you've actually wasted your time as well. So how do we solve that? Well, what is it that's causing the issues? Well, what's causing the issues is the fact you've got lots of different types of displays out there nowadays. And those displays are only getting more and more. Let's face it, you'll have an Apple Watch you'll be able to look at sometime soon, potentially. You've certainly got lots of different tablet computers, maybe Cintiqs, maybe different types of phones, obviously lots of different types of desktop machines and screens and laptops and so on. And they all have different tolerances. Apple computers tend to be, in fact a lot of computers nowadays tend to be a lot brighter, sharper and more colourful than they need to be, or rather than they are in truth. The images need to be in truth, because what they're aimed at is basically the consumer marketplace where people want nice, shiny, bright photographs. But actually, more that they're doing that. What we want, of course, is to be able to trust what we're seeing on screen, don't we? We want to be able to look at those screens and say, that's my image, and that's how other people on nicely calibrated screens are going to see it, how I'm going to see it on my other machines, for instance, my tablet computer, when I take it around as a portable portfolio, and more importantly, when I spend money sending it to a print company or print it out myself to my own printer, my own calibrated printer, that's how I want it to come out. And of course, it won't if you haven't calibrated, because you've got so many different ways of seeing things, or at least it's very likely to. And of course, even if you go and invest in the same displays across your entire studio, that could give varied results, because they could have varied manufacturing tolerances, and also they can age as well. So let's have a look at the other thing that could make things difficult for you. If I may ask you for a bit of audience participation at this point, folks, just, if you wouldn't mind, focus on that white dot at the center of the screen. Keep on focusing. Keep on focusing. I'm just going to show you or make a point to you about what happens with your eyes. Keep on focusing on that white dot. Because if I don't do that, what you're going to see, potentially, on the left-hand side is, in my case, I see a slightly redder image. On the right-hand side, I see a slightly yellower image. But actually, you're seeing an effect, because they're both exactly the same shots either side of that white dot now. But what you're seeing is your brain, or your eyes, in fact, in this case, tricking you because of the latency of what has been going on beforehand. We show you a red and a yellow patch beforehand, or a red and a green patch, depending on whether you're colorblind or not. And effectively, it's fooling you. So therefore, there's a whole bunch of parameters that can happen as far as the way we perceive colors, because we're just looking at it on different types of displays, machines, etc., etc. And they can age, but also you can have a profound effect here as well. Key thing about this, folks, is you can't rely on yourself to solve your color management issues, to say, okay, I'm looking at the machine, I've got really good eyesight, and therefore I know that the colors are going to come out correct. What I need to do is to have a solution to calibrate that. Well, this, of course, is the most profound part of color management, calibrating your screens. Get yourself a Spyder, folks. It's a USB-based device, plug it into your computers, and it allows you to calibrate a whole range of different types of displays. So you can do things from standard computer displays through tablet computers, through projectors, you name it, you can do it. Cintiqs, for instance, as well. It's giving you that ability to calibrate all those. And as you can see, it's something that you don't actually need to hold it against the screen. Basically, it'll hang, is counterbalanced with a little weight, so it hangs against the screen, and it allows you to essentially run a whole bunch of color swatches against or in front of the eye of the device, because that little Spyder, as it's pointing towards the screen there, has a multiple sensor pointing towards that screen. And the software it comes with, again, both Mac and PC, allows you to effectively read the colors that you're seeing there, and gives you the ability to create what we call a profile, a correction factor. So I'm not going to have a chance to go into it tonight, but I can take you through profiles in another session, or go and have a look at some of our reruns of previous webinars, and you'll see more about profiles and profiling, basically. And it's the same process here that we're going to end up with using to correct your back end, things like printers, if you happen to print yourself, or more importantly, if you're using print companies, it's what they should be using. If they're not, you should be running away fast. But basically, this calibration here, this color calibration, is giving you that opportunity to create a correction factor. And the way it works, the software automatically applies that as soon as you hit save at the end of the process. It's a very simple process. It takes about 3, maybe 5 minutes at most to calibrate a screen. And basically, every time you change lighting conditions, you should recalibrate. If you're doing this as a hobby, I'd suggest you probably should calibrate maybe once every fortnight. Professionally, you should really be calibrating at least once a week. And certainly, if you're changing lighting conditions, if you're suddenly using a machine and you're outside, you've got it on your laptop, you're moving to do stuff at a wedding, for instance, recalibrate as soon as you get there, because otherwise you won't be able to trust what you're seeing. So that's the solution, basically. It's called a Spyder, and it's the market-leading device for color calibration of screens. It comes in 3 flavors, so we've got the Express, the Pro, and the Elite. Essentially, the Express is aimed at the home user marketplace, so hobbyists. It doesn't allow you to calibrate more than 1 display per machine. So if you've got a laptop, it'll do the laptop screen, but you won't be able to plug a second display in there and calibrate that. which is why the Pro is probably the most popular device with photographers, because you can do exactly what the Express can't do there. You can calibrate multiple screens. And also the Pro and the Elite's at the top of the range, are really aimed at people with multiple displays wanting to get the absolute complete control on your color. But basically, the Pro and the Elite also have an ambient lighting sensor as well, allowing you to calibrate your surroundings as well, or calibrate for your surroundings, I should say, your lighting conditions. Gives you tips and tricks on whether it's too bright, too dark, etc., etc. So get one of those, and really you can take control of that color management. Now, harping back to the SpyderCHECKR, of course, and I mentioned if you're colorblind, well, actually, the SpyderCHECKR would solve your color calibration issues for you, provided you don't retouch. But if you do want to go in and retouch, even if you're not adjusting colors, but if you're adjusting lightness and so on, exposure basically, contrast, then you do need to have calibrated your screens as well, because what you want to do is to be able to trust what you're seeing. So, nice little extra for tonight. We're running a spring promotion at the moment, so if you happen to want an Express, normally €99. If you go to the Datacolor store, so if you go to the Euro Datacolor store, and you'll get details, I'm sure, of this tomorrow via email as well, then basically you can get a €20 discount off of your Spyder Express. The Pro is probably the most prolific one, and very nice discount there, down from €149 to 129, just using the spring promotion codes. You need to go and go to the spring promotion, hit the spring promotion window, it'll take you through and it'll show you the code to pop in order to get these discounts. You apply that at the checkout, and you can get that discount on checkout, basically. And likewise on the Elite, down from 209 rather to €179. Now, prices are all in euros. If you are in the UK, for instance, you can be purchasing from the Euro site, completely capable of doing so, because you know, the joys of being in the European Union, even if we're not in the Euro. But you do have the advantages you're buying across borders, because this store is based in Switzerland. So therefore, if you're buying across borders, then you will be actually maybe in Germany. But anyway, if you're buying from the UK, you can pop in your VAT code, and it will give you the opportunity to remove VAT at source. Now, those are three individual types of Spyder. The last thing to mention is it brings it all together. Because if you want the Cube, the SpyderCHECKR, and a Spyder, in this case the Elite, plus, I already mentioned you could use the SpyderCHECKR to do your calibration of your video solutions using things like Blackmagic Resolve. But if you'd also like to be able to calibrate your video screens, your playback monitors, things like the Atmos displays, etc., then actually something called the Spyder HD has all of those in the package as basically a pre-packaged solution for video and photo calibration at the front end, and gives you that unique ability to be calibrating your video playback displays as well. Now, normally comes in at £287. At the moment, spring promotion through the European Datacolor store, and that's only through that Datacolor store. Go to the orders section on the Datacolor website. You can get that bundle, the Spyder HD bundle, for €282 just over, which is just about £204 at the exchange rate I had a look earlier on. So about £80 off there, basically. So a nice little extra spring promo for you folks. Hopefully that's of interest. Comes in a nice metallized case as well, so it should be nicely protected and able for you to carry it anywhere. And basically, it also comes with something called the SpyderWeb, which allows you to attach your display to your color SpyderCHECKR to bigger displays, anything up to about 70 inches in size, basically. It's as you can see, it's an expandable, rubberized display mount, Spyder mount, I should say. So that's it, folks. I have actually run over the 45 minutes I was suggesting I was going to do, but we've got a few seconds to give you a few other top tips if you want to find out more about color calibration. We didn't get a chance tonight to talk about print calibration, to show you much about profiles. If you'd like to come along to the photo show, I'm running a theatre. In fact, I'm running various theatres at the photo show in Birmingham. That's at the end of next week. Starts, I think, on the 21st, runs through to the 24th of March, and basically it's in the NEC Hall 5, I think it is, in Birmingham. That's the photo show. We'll be running various different theatres. You can come along and have a chat with myself and the rest of the team, and basically we can answer any of your, or hopefully answer any of your questions on color calibration and how to get the best out of things like Photoshop and Lightroom as well. But if you don't get the chance to, you can always go and download the English version of this ebook from the URL at the bottom there. As you can see, it comes in multiple different languages, so it's also available in German and French for starters. So please feel free to go to this URL to pick up that particular ebook. It is free, just download it, as I say. If you have any other areas you'd like to see more of, if you'd like to see more sort of visual versions of what I've been showing you tonight, then go to our YouTube channel and you can have a look at some of our YouTube videos there. If you have any questions, if you have any feedback, any things you'd like to see, please drop us a line via our various different social media blogs. And likewise, and lastly, if you have any cutting-edge questions that in the next few minutes I don't get a chance to answer because we're going to have to keep it pretty short on question time tonight, please feel free to phone our free European support line. That's 20 800 700 870, and it is 2 zeros at the start because it is a European free phone number. Or go to our free ticketing service via the website at http://support.datacolor.com, and you can pop in your questions there. So folks, with that, I am going to say thank you very much for your time and open the questions up to you if you have any questions. We've literally only got a couple of minutes for questions tonight, so I apologize in advance about that. But if you do have questions, then